going very quick because it's a lot of information, and I just want to cover some kind of good information in this session. So this is about overall architecture. We replaced on-prem with AWS right now, and we have a lot of services, and there are more number of services, and more efficiently you can use it. And you can replace this whole EC2 or infrastructure setup also with Lambda, and I'll go over that a little bit. And there are certain other services where you can so if you want to manually create all this setup, right, it will take a couple of days without creating any errors or without having any errors. But there are certain services where you can do it very quickly by setting a template. So let's go to the next slide and see what we have for application services. AWS application services, if you see here, we have basically, let us say your application, Eames application, or let us say I'll take like Facebook or Twitter, they want to expose their services through API call, right? So through API call so that all the third-party applications can integrate their services. So we have something called as API gateway, where we can, in Amazon, it's a managed API gateway where it takes care of all the throttling, scaling, everything, and you just write the code and deploy it in the gateway, and that will be accessed with the external third-party vendors. Now, when external folks are trying to access your services, right, you should be able to manage them. So for that, we can use Cognito service in AWS, where you have basically, you can manage web users and mobile users using this particular service. So this is about application services, right? Now let's go ahead and see what security services are there. So if you look at the security services, main service I would look at is identity and access management. So identity and access management basically will manage, it's a primary service for creating AWS users and permissions. So we can create the roles and have several roles access several services using this IAM, right? And then, like say, if your EC2 wants to access S3, then basically it can access the data through this particular role, and we create a role for EC2 so that EC2 can access S3. Similarly, Kinesis can access S3. So these kind of roles we do it using identity and management, access management. Now, going to the next service, if you want to encrypt all the data, right, at various locations, you have all this data sitting in EBS in the disk, and then S3 and Redshift and various places in RDS, right? Then what basically we do is we have something called as key management service. So this key management service will encrypt keys for all these services without any issue. You don't need to worry about all this encryption. So you can encrypt all the services here at S3, at RDS, Elastic Cache, at your EBS, block storage, everything. So for this application will be, since this application is used via web, we use using HTTPS protocol, but we need to secure the communication. So we use some kind of digital certificates so we have something called a certificate manager, AWS certificate manager, where we can use that to manage all the certificates. So when we access the data, we can we basically can have a firewall, right? It's called Web Application Firewall. This is a service provided by AWS, so that it can prevent all the SQL injections or some malware attacks and all the stuff. So you can deploy this Web Application Firewall at the load balancer or CloudFront at certain entry location, right? So if you're going for the compliance and like HIPAA compliance, your machines need to be patched, right? So that properly, and they should be free from all vulnerabilities. So what we do is we have some service called as Inspector, AWS Inspector, where it puts an agent in your machine and scans for all the vulnerabilities, and it generates a report so that you can look at the report and start fixing those vulnerabilities. So this is about security services. Let's go to development and DevOps services, right? So as I mentioned earlier in my slide, like if Facebook using the whole architecture, right? So they don't want to manually create each service and set up every time they want to, they go live with another application or a new application. So what they can do is they can create a template using this cloud formation, and this cloud formation will deploy all these services in no matter of time, like 30 minutes to 1 hour. It can so this template, you can define a template in the form of JSON or YAML format and create this infrastructure completely in 30 minutes to 1 hour. So this kind of this cloud formation is a very nice service where you basically set up a template, and everybody in the organization, whenever they want to launch a new application, they can follow this template and start doing that. So like that, we have developers, like say in our team, we have a .NET developer, we have a SQL developer, we have a Tableau developer. So we would like to store all the code, and also we have some QA analysts where they do some testing. So they need to store all the code in some repository. That repository is called as code commit repository. So basically we store all the code and this infrastructure as a code also, we store that in a something called, it's like a Git repository, GitHub or Git repository. So code commit is the service where basically AWS, it's a version control service hosted by AWS. It's basically used for storing and managing all the documents, source code, etc. in the cloud. The other service, so once you have all this information, you need a service for building it. So we use something called as Cloud Build. So Cloud Build is a service where basically it takes the source code and build that using the build tool like Maven, and it does some kind of unit testing and produces artifacts. And then Code Build, so we need some kind of deployment service as well. That is called as Code Deploy. So Code Deploy is basically it enables developers to automate. Basically, it can automate the deployment of applications and then update the applications as and when required. So we have Code Build, Code Deploy, so we can automate everything, all this code commit. Once code is committed, we can build the code and we can test it out and we can deploy it. All this can be automated using Code Pipeline. It is a continuous delivery service, CI/CD service, which is available in AWS to basically set up an automation. So all these things are available for DevOps folks. And then let us say we want to track our defects and all those things. Then we have some kind of project management tool called as CodeStar. Basically, this is well integrated with Jira and Atlassian tools and other tools, and this is used for creating and managing and all the software development projects on AWS. So if you come up until now, so that you are completely aware of majorly widely used services in AWS, and so I'll take a break here and I'll just stop here and see if anyone has any questions.